Welcome everyone to another installment of our Book of Boba Something panel, where we talk about Disney Plus's newest entry into the Star Wars canon-ish, whether you like it or not, apparently. With me, first off, I'm your host for tonight, Joe. Matt is not here. Matt is dealing with Matt things, and that's awesome. So he decided to go ahead and hand over the reins of reality to chaos, and that's it is what it is. With me, I have a distinguished panel of familiar faces that we love and are happy to have here. First off, to my direct left on screen, I have Michael. How's it going, Mike?
This love letter to episode 1 turned into a love letter of canon, and I'm so ready to discuss it.
To my south, we have Jaz. Jaz, welcome back. We missed you last episode.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back, and I can't wait to talk about this episode.
And returning for, I believe this is your second appearance on our panel, we have Damien. Damien, I'm so happy to have you back, man. I always love talking Star Wars with people that love Star Wars.
Yeah, I'm happy to be back, and clearly I love Star Wars. See my background.
It's true. You have the internet's favorite foundling on your shelf back there. Yep. So let's go ahead and get into it, because the Book of Mandalorian is such a interesting episode. It is Book of Boba Fett, Chapter 5, The Return of the Mandalorian. And, you know, we kind of knew this was coming, but not necessarily to this extent. So we're going to talk about the Mando in the room for spoilers and everything else. This chapter, this episode is like 95% just Mandalorian things. Hashtag just Mandalorian things, with a little bit of returning to Boba Fett back in the end. So first off, we're going to go ahead and read the room. Jaz, what'd you think?
So while I was sitting there watching this episode, I literally had to pause it not once but twice to make sure I was watching the correct thing for this panel, because I was like, wait a second, what am I watching? The Mandalorian here? But I mean, I loved it. It was great. It had everything that I've been craving in the Star Wars universe for Boba Fett, including the Darksaber, but we'll get to that later.
Okay. All right. Michael, how do you feel?
I couldn't believe that we got half an hour in and I was still expecting to see Boba Fett, but I'm really glad that we didn't see Boba Fett. Even though I love him, I was just happy to have Mando back and see Mando doing Mando things. So
yep. Damien.
Yeah, as I keep saying, I've been tweeting it. Worst episode of the Book of Boba Fett, but one of the best episodes of the Mandalorian. I mean, it was fun.
It's true. Even for a Mandalorian episode, this was really good. There was a lot of movement, a lot going on, not a lot of stagnation happening, which is very important. I too really enjoyed this episode. I still really like the Book of Boba Fett, but I'm glad we had this after dinner mint before we have dessert, so to speak. And I'm excited to see where it goes from here. Like, I don't even know what the next episode's going to be. Is it going to be another Mando focused one or another Boba focused one? So we're going to find out. So we're going to talk about how it starts with a very, very basic bounty hunt situation, except Mando is loaded to the bear with basically the spoils of the last season. What y'all think of the another world building element of seeing a butcher shop in the freaking Star Wars universe? Anyone want to chime?
I mean, who doesn't love seeing a butcher shop just get completely gutted in the best way? Oh, we added some more meat to the hooks. Am I right? Also, I think this might be the first time we've seen someone other than Darth Maul get cut in half with a lightsaber. So
that sounds right. I think this is the first time I've seen in a long time someone get cut in half in a butcher shop, at least since Predator 2, or a meat locker since Predator 2. What about you two, the rest of you, Jaz, Damien?
I mean, we basically got right off the bat with fighting, and I thought it was awesome. And I mean, because I guess I just love action movies. What can I say?
It's true.
And then we also got the armor coming into play here too,
yep.
Which is great.
Yep.
And all I can say really is this is the way.
Yep.
Yeah, that first shot of Mando kind of behind, the plastic drapes there before he really comes into the butcher shop and starts, going about his bounty hunting business. Me and my daughter were sitting there watching it, and she lost her crap at it. She's 1.5 and she starts squealing it.
TV. Right. Oh yeah, totally. It's really nice to kind of see the Mandalorian return to form, because not only was it returning to Mandalorian, but it was a very Mandalorian. He walks in, he's like, I'm gonna give you a chance to do this right, and they're like, no, and he's like,
Okay.
all right, you pushed me. My few thoughts is it's really interesting that he still kind of sucks with the sword. At first I thought it was because it's a sword with no weight, but it turns out, as we find out later, it's a sword with too much weight, um, which is really weird but awesome. I also really think it's hilarious that Mando got out of a massive conflict by going basically workers' rights, thumbs up, and left.
Yeah.
So
I really loved when he ended up hurting himself with the darksaber in that fight scene, because I
Yep.
feel like we've seen inexperienced users use lightsabers and the darksaber and similar weapons, but they seem to pick it up easily. It was kind of nice to kind of see a guy who says his religion is weapons, suck at using this weapon.
Yep, especially a weapon made by Mandalorians for Mandalorians. Like, this is the ultimate irony of the situation. And I have some thoughts on that we'll get into later when it comes to that point. So afterwards, he goes to deliver the bounty, which is in a small convenient sack, because, which, by the way, coolest beheading scene in a Star Wars movie that, like, we didn't see, but we totally saw. Darksaber effect really hit with that. And we get to see that he's on the first time we've ever seen what everyone is referring to, the ring world. I'm also like, is Bungie going to say something? Because this is obviously a Halo as well. My partner even said, like, that looks like a space station from Gundam. I'm like, yes, it all looks like this. Sci-fi is a cyclical ring. Anyway.
We see what you did there. Joe.
Yeah. Drops off the head. And yeah, what did we think of some of this subtle world building?
Can we talk about why every single mob boss is trying to get these bounty hunters to sit down and eat and like bend them to their will? And I mean, it's funny. Actually, this is the first moment that I guess I'll really bring it back to Boba and how similar Mando and Boba can be at times, where it just seems like no matter how much they're trying to do the honorable thing and stick to their guns, there's so many elements in this galaxy that they're trying to pull them into the underworld and be less than like what they want to be.
Yep. I think it's interesting too, because I think this goes a long way, and this does a better job of explaining Boba Fett's mentality for why he's doing what he's doing than Boba Fett could. Because these crime lords are, like you mentioned, trying to force these bounty hunters to kind of be their pet bodyguard kind of things, like Chrysanthemum was being and stuff. And the bounty hunters are like, nah, you're not good at this. So yeah, I get that vibe. And like I said, I think it goes a long way to showing at least Boba Fett's motivation, which is funny because Boba Fett had nothing to do with this.
I really like that parallel you brought up, because I didn't think about that until you just said it. And it's completely, absolutely true. Yeah.
I think it's nice that we just got to see somewhere that's not Tatooine.
Yeah, exactly. I've always said, and even some of it's really funny. My personal opinion is some of the worst scenes and worst things that people almost universally hate, even when they love something, they hate about it in Star Wars, are like the diner on Coruscant and the and I'm a huge Last Jedi fan, but I also am like, but the casino planet was a really weak scene. But what I love about these is we get to see something about Star Wars that's not a single biome planet or a war-torn world. So it's really nice. Like, stuff like this is really good for world building. And I think they did a better job of doing it in the Mandalorian, the Book of Boba Fett Mandalorian, this episode, because we're not really there for a real long time. We're just kind of there as a set piece background. Like, it's stealth world building, not making it a big deal. So but moving to the next step, we reintroduce on this amazing ring world situation. Underneath it are some familiar faces again. The armorer and who I think was originally called just the Heavy Mandalorian, but now has the name Paz Vizsla, which I'm imagining that was his name all along. Of course, it's just framing of things. What we get is a massive lore dump and some montages and some other stuff. I'm going to start with Damien, because there's a lot to unpack in this massive scene of things. Damien, what was some of your favorite highlights of this scene with the other two Mandalorians showing back up?
I really liked, so as the armorer is describing what the Darksaber is, kind of its history for Paz and Din. He's wearing a helmet, but Paz Vizsla, you can see he's going through a range of emotions without seeing his face. He's like,
the body language is strong.
Yeah, he's like, so this is basically an heirloom of my ancestors. Why do you have it? And
That this non-blooded Mandalorian has gained in combat and now thinks he should own.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed just kind of like his body language and kind of their just kind of the story too, from the armor, kind of describing it and whatnot. It was really good.
Yep. Michael.
I would say at this point, if you enjoyed this episode as much as the rest of us did, that's your excuse to go watch Star Wars Rebels, because this harkened back to a huge arc in season 3, where we get the history of the Darksaber from another perspective. And we also see someone else train with it, and their ability and connection to not necessarily the Force as a Jedi, but being open to the living Force allows the blade to connect with them a lot quicker. And we see Din having the same struggle, but he is not, the armor that is like housing him is blocking him off, not from his relationships with other people, but also from the Force itself. I think it's a really good metaphor for, I think we're going to eventually see Din start to shed these pieces of who he identifies with as a Mandalorian, in terms of like the Beskar represents who I am, more as like, no, I embody what Mandalore is. And we're going to see that relationship develop as Mandalorian continues, right? As Din's journey continues.
Kind of like a best of both worlds of both, like the Mandalorians that I don't remember, Katie Sackhoff's character.
Bo-Katan.
Bo-Katan represents, and the Mandalorians that these fundamentalists represent. Kind of like merging that kind of situation. I agree completely. Jazz.
I mean, I don't know how I can follow that, but I mean, I definitely, I mean, I didn't know that the history, have never seen that series, so I didn't know about that, which is really cool. I'm gonna have to go watch something later now. But I mean, I don't think this is gonna be the end of these two characters. I absolutely loved seeing like the old versus the new and the struggle that goes on between that. And I mean, I just love the darkness of it, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at.
It's fair. For me, there's a lot here. Like I wrote down that it's a Mandalorian dump. Nice little lore dump there. I really enjoyed that they melted down the spear, because as the armor said, Mandalorian steel is meant for armor, not weapons. Which is a really nice, again, dogmatic thing, but really kind of a cool poetic statement. And I like that the amount of parallels between the Mandalorians and the Jedi is super, super, super deep in this entire scene. When he talks about wanting to make something for a foundling, make something for Grogu, she's like, well, the Jedi are like shed attachment. And he's like, yeah, but we're not. We're like about loyalty and sticking with the people we care about. And she's like, yeah, that tracks. So also the fact that Din Djarin is like this nice little bridge between like what could be like a peaceful coexistence between the Mandalorians and the Jedi, who have had a rocky past for thousands of years. And it's symbolic that he's got the Darksaber, which is a weapon crafted by a Mandalorian Jedi, which is just this, again, it's layers of symbolism that are just amazing here. And the internet went crazy over them mentioning the mythosaur, which, space dinosaurs. And the last thing I have to point out here before we get to the duel and the apostasy is when they do the flashback of the Night of a Thousand Tears, I really loved the K units being the front runners of the warfare or the attack on Mandalore, to the point where like, oh, this is just Terminator. That's all this is. This is Terminator.
That scene was probably my favorite, if not my favorite, my second favorite of the entire episode. It was beautifully dark. I loved it. It was destructive.
It's like, for a entire series about warfare, this is the first time we've seen like literally the concept of the horrors of war. I mean, we got to see planets get blown up, sure, and I'm not debating that, but like this is like visceral looking. Like everything that happened on Mandalore looked bad.
It was dark, it was vivid, and they showed it to us. You can see a Mandalorian on the ground with his hand up and a K2 unit, popping them.
Yeah.
We haven't given her flowers yet, but Bryce Dallas Howard, this is the third episode she's directed of a Star Wars series, and every single time she's brought it with a clear and obvious reference to cinema. She's such a student of film. We had the ATST referencing Jurassic Park. We had the raindrops on the Razor Crest coming in to represent Apollo 13. And I didn't realize it until someone lined it up shot for shot, but geez, the reference to Terminator is unreal how close the shots line up.
Yep. I mean, the K2 units walk like T-800s. That's just what they do. I'm firmly in the camp of like, give her more Star Wars stuff to do, because she does a really good job. So we have a duel between Paz and Din for the saber, and Din wins, but then, the whole helmet thing. So my partner brought up an interesting point. She's like, why did she wait until now to ask about the helmet thing? Like, that should have been like the first thing. And I had a subtle realization is, I think earlier when they're doing their training montage and she talks about you're distracted, you can't focus, et cetera, she couldn't figure out why then. And I think it was a 2 + 2 = 4 at that moment. Like, hey, have you ever taken your helmet off? And he's obvious, like his body language is like, yeah. So like that she figured out what was bothering him and weighing on his mind. So that was my thought on that. What did y'all think of the duel and the expulsion from the Mandalorians?
I kind of liked how she didn't turn around as he was leaving, just kind of like ignored him.
Yeah.
I think one of you guys said it just a few minutes ago, but we're not done seeing these characters, obviously. I'm curious to know if they're going to be some type of antagonist towards Din Djarin moving forward, or some faction he's trying to win over in retaking Mandalore, maybe.
Yeah. It's interesting because he mentions afterwards, like, how can I fix this, redeem myself? And she mentions the waters under the mind of Mandalore, the living waters under the mind of Mandalore. And I'm thinking that like, that's going to be one of his motivators to go like, all right, I guess I got to go help retake Mandalore then.
Yeah.
You guys get the vibe that like they're kind of like a parent that you can't impress in a way, and so he feels the need to like constantly try and live up to their expectation, even though it's not healthy for him, or like all of his paths are so clearly and obviously taking him like away from this covert and like cult, if you will, of like Mandalorian. Like the Watch is clearly a like religious offshoot. We've seen so many other Mandalorians like have lived more normal lives, and even then the Clone Wars try to push for pacifism, and like they keep making him, I guess, second guess himself, and all he really is trying to do is find himself.
Any thoughts on this, Jazz?
I mean, I really love Michael's outlook on being someone who's trying to impress their parents, and I would actually really like to kind of see that explored within the rest of the story. I'm not sure if we're going to get that this season, but I mean, I think that would make for a great next chapter if that so chooses.
Yeah.
But like my first impression was, I was wondering if like Boba Fett would end up being the bounty hunter to get Mando, our Mando, and seeing a battle between those two, because I get the vibe that that's where we're going to end up, maybe a Mandalorian Boba Fett duel of some sort, because this is the Book of Boba Fett. So
I'm not sure if I see them like butting heads necessarily. I see like a final disagreement, like whenever the dust settles after the fight kind of situation. Mando's like, cool, now stop being a crime lord, man. And Boba's like, nah. Because I think I'm doing the right thing. Mando's like, it's not the right thing. This is the right thing. And whatever. There probably will be a falling out of some sort, but we'll get to the Boba Fett entrance reference mention in a little bit. We do have a comment from someone watching the show, our Captain Kyle actually throwing in there, that Boba Fett isn't all that fond of lightsabers. He is definitely not fond of a bunch of Jedi related things, with good reason. And yeah, I feel like that might cause some friction when he shows up later, but we'll see. for my part, I do like the parallels again of the rigidity in the orders of like the Watch and the Jedi. They're both very rigid orders that demand like this near zealot like adherence to their code, but for different reasons. And it's just, again, the parallels are amazing in this kind of stuff. Like
a dichotomy of attachment, right? Like,
yeah,
it's crazy.
It's like they're both equally as attached to the dumbest things, but like they can't see that in each other and get along, if that makes sense. Next we have Mando leaving the Halo, the space ring, the ring world, whatever you want to call it. Star Wars is really liking the series, so they put a ring on it. But he's leaving on a passenger flight, and I'm not gonna lie, I feel like they dicked us over in this scene because my anxiety shot through the roof when he's trying to board the flight. They're like, you can't have weapons, put the weapons in here. I'm like, oh no, the dark saber. Like,
right.
As soon as he puts everything in there, and like he keeps looking at the droid, you son of a, making me do this, to the point to where like he's like, all right, I'll put the dark saber in there, and I'm like, it's gonna be missing as soon as he gets to Tatooine. It's got to be, that's what's gonna happen. And then also I really enjoyed the Rodian kid that's on the ship. I had to ask my partner, I'm like, do you think that kid thinks he's a droid? So what did y'all think of this little short scene, you know, when he gets to Tatooine and the and his stuff is fine?
I kind of had the same feeling you did when he's putting his weapons in the crate and he kind of stops and looks at the dark saber. I was like, please don't do it. It's going to be missing. So when we get to Tatooine and he opens, you know, the crate, I was like looking so dedicated. Like, is everything there?
Yeah. Yep. You pause it and you scan.
Yeah. I thought it was going to be like one of those weird TSA checks where they like pull out a dildo but they accidentally turn on the dark saber. Yeah, just a little moment of humor in this very serious episode of Star Wars.
There's a lot of moments of humor in this very serious episode of Star Wars.
I mean, I agree with you guys. I thought the dark saber was going to be missing as well. But
yep.
I mean, clearly, I guess that was a missed opportunity for a story, but
I think it was literally just there to increase the anxiety, like to make us feel what Mando's going through right now. And it's like, yep. Because it's the only one like it in the universe. It's 1,000 years old. It's everyone freaking wants it.
Mm-hmm.
I do love that he's a bounty hunter though, and he's forced to take commercial travel.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Which, by the way, I think this is the first time we've seen commuter flights in Star Wars. Like, we've always known they existed, but like this is the first time we've actually seen it.
A clear advertisement for Galactic Star Cruiser.
Oh. Are they going to make me check my weapon at the door, like my plastic?
They might. Leave your keys and your lightsaber in the thing, and we'll give it back to you when you make it to the planet.
I also got real nervous that the droid on Tatooine was glitchy. Like the one that was on the ring world was obviously fine. He was good. Mm-hmm. But the one on Tatooine was like, here's your, I'm like, good Lord.
The heat affects everything out there.
It's the sand. It gets everywhere. All right. So we've reached Tatooine again, which, by the way, I want to point out, this is the first time that we've actually seen scenes of anything off of Tatooine, and we're back at Tatooine now in the entire of the Book of Boba Fett. That is, like, we know between the flashback and the present, Boba has left Tatooine, but you know he's back on Tatooine again, and the whole show has been on Tatooine, and now we're back. Yay! So we get more Mandalorian reference characters. I think her name is Peli Motto. I like to call it strangers with ship parts. For those that get the reference, I appreciate use. So what do you think, Jazz? What do we think about the scene with them?
I mean, I loved it. I was like, oh my God, it's like a female Han Solo almost.
I mean, this is her return as a character, and she's a fun character.
To be fair, like, I haven't made my way through the whole Mandalorian series yet, so I don't think I've met her, honestly, but I absolutely loved her from the moment that she showed up. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that was quite an entrance. So
yeah. For those that haven't seen the book or the Mandalorian or know the character, Pelimoto is played by Amy Sedaris, who has a fantastic rap sheet of history of acting in everything from BoJack Horseman to I mentioned Strangers with Ship Parts, Strangers with Candy reference from Comedy Central's olden days, and she plays this character so perfectly.
She really does. I absolutely love her, and I'm definitely can't wait to get to her character.
Her whole scene there had like so many Easter eggs to it too. I mean, you get the BD droid from Jedi Fallen Order. Whatever was it, a Womp Rat or something that was like attacking the BD droid, and then her. It was so great. Like, it was fantastic.
Just a smorgasbord of canon, right, Damien?
This whole episode is like, remember these references, and it doesn't do it in a way that I'm like rolling my eyes the whole time, but it's close. Like, it edges right up there to where like I like this, but it's not too much yet.
It edged up there to where you're like, I remember.
I'm too busy laughing to be angry about it.
Someone in the chat said, looks like someone fixed R5's motivator. I mean, he did seem pretty motivated this time around. One of the things, or two of the things, again, related to Pelimoto in this, that I thought was phenomenal is we find out that Jawas are very furry because apparently she dated one, which, the internet is going to have to chew that apart. And then we have that she speaks Jawese, which I think is the first time we've had someone that wasn't a Jawa able to speak Jawese, which I thought was really cool. Any other thoughts on these scenes?
This is Pelly's 5th appearance on screen, and I can finally say that I actually enjoyed her performance. I'm a hater. But she killed it in this episode. I think she's finally growing on me.
I think she had the most screen time in this episode, so it really kind of like builds her up, and you get to know her more.
I will agree that this time around she's more than just a handful of comments and one-liners. We get to see motivation as a character, the things she can do. She because previously they just kind of give you the idea that like she just kind of runs a hangar and she can fix some ships. But she's mostly just there to make like snarky comments and be like the crazy old mechanic trope. But like they really do lean into her character a little more this time around, and I do appreciate that. Yeah,
I really like how it was kind of after she mentioned she dated a Jawa, and when the Jawas bring them this specific part for the starfighter, she says to the Jawa, "No, I'm just working on me right now."
Like, I'd imagine what that Jawa said to her in Jawese was like, "Hey, what you doing? How you doing?
How you doing?"
I got some furry hands that want to do some furry exploring.
See, like I started thinking about like what caused them to like when she was dating the Jawa, what caused them to break up, and it's probably because if he's furry, then he probably just used all of her shampoo for like one shower.
Oh,
I mean, she has them curls, so like,
yeah, you gotta have the shampoo to keep that hair good, especially on a planet like Tatooine is probably super expensive, and the Jawa probably literally just like emptied the bottle and lathered up. Now that Jawa was probably looking really good afterwards, like body out the wazoo on
the
that
sheen.
Yeah, but and just to throw on the dirty robe again,
Can we get that as a deleted scene now? Because I need to see that. That'd be amazing.
The Jawa was just like slow-mo with the sparkles.
Start the petition, Jazz. I'll sign it.
This is our Rogers the musical for Star Wars. Okay, that's what we need. So
I'm here for it.
So they start the ship up, and okay, so we didn't talk about this too much. He shows up because she told him she's got a replacement for the Razor Crest, another ship. And what we have is another reference, a Nabooan fighter ship for the Royal Guard, and it is in piss poor shape. But the entire montage is them basically Casey Jonesing and Donatelloing it back together, with so much tech jargon back and forth, but and none of it makes sense. All of it's jibber jabber, but it sounds accurate and it makes sense because they say it with such confidence. And it's just kind of fun because their personalities are fun off of each other. But what did we think about both the appearance of the Nabooan fighter and the completed look? Because that completed look.
Yeah, that was a pretty sweet completed look.
Yeah.
Sure.
I need them to make this in Star Wars: The Black Series scale. I want it.
That would be so good.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh,
I need it.
I don't
As
think
Maddie
anybody
would say, "Come get us. We're right here."
get those Square Enix models to make one of these for it.
Yeah, like it's so good, and I was so excited when I saw they had a Nubian in there. I was ecstatic. I don't care what kind of condition it was in. I'd be happy if I was Din Djarin.
Yeah.
Did anyone see the N1 muscle car variant coming? Like, I just didn't.
Oh.
And so,
No.
and
With
so
the,
when
with
it
the
was-
engine just sticking out of the hood. Holy, I was like, I dig it. So basically he's gone from like being like your Western bounty hunter to like a heavy metal bounty hunter.
I just like, this must be the first submission on our like Starship porn. Like it just looks so beautiful.
It does. I do really appreciate it's a subtle thing, but they left some of the yellow on the ship.
Yeah.
There's 2 stripes on the wings and a couple of stripes on the back of the ship of just the same yellow as the Naboo fighter color scheme. And it really, the accents really make the design work for me. Like, it's so good. Going to my favorite trope of the Star Wars mechanic theme is the almost mystical mechanic that can just hear the engine go like, "Nah, we don't got to run diagnostics. It's good." And it is good. It's good. I also think it's hilarious that he's a bounty hunter, and part of the benefit of something like the Razor Crest is it's basically a mobile home / mobile prison. And I think we're going to see a big transformation for Mando's character as we don't see him bounty hunt anymore. He's going to be moving more to like professional adventurer kind of thing. Because where are you going to stick a bounty on that thing?
That was my thought too. She said she hollowed out the astromech port, but at first I was like, okay, so maybe he can just shove, his bounty in that thing. But then on my second or third watch through, I'm like, no, that's too small.
No, that's for Grogu. Come on, we know that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think he's going to be a bounty hunter much longer.
Whoa, guys, come on. He can strap carbonite blocks to those wings like a Christmas tree.
But where's the carbonite maker?
Duct tape. You can strap it. Yeah, exactly. I'm with Michael on that.
He's going to have
Beskar bungee cords. Like, come on.
We're just going to have a scene of him flying through space with like this convoy of carbonite containers just dragging behind him like freaking like train.
These people are bounties. So, I mean, who really cares? Like, if they're in good shape.
Or it can take you in cold. And space is cold.
Very cold. And fun fact, when you're talking about carbonite, warm or cold, both can mean alive. It's just, are you going to cooperate or not? So we get what is next, the next collection of references and a montage of him testing the flight. So what did we think about the biggest reference of the episode so far? That is referenced at least in 2 movies, Beggar's Canyon and his little test flight. Jazz, what'd you think?
I mean, I didn't get those references. I'm going to be honest right now. So
Fair enough. Michael. Damien, go for it.
I was just going to say, I yelled, "Now this is pod racing."
When she started uncovering the ship, that's what my first thought went like, did she just get like pod racer parts and make a starship out of pod racer parts?
That's what I thought too.
And there probably are pod racer parts on that ship. Let's be honest. If their Jawa's getting the parts for her from all over, they're probably like, this will work. So related, my partner brought this, we're watching it. When I was younger, I had a Ford Taurus as like my second car. And at one point the transmission died. So we basically bought a transmission from a Lincoln Town car, dropped it in there, and had to splice a connector for it to work. And I'm like, oh, now I'm flashing back.
I love the mirroring shots from the pod race. That felt really good to me. And then it's like, it was kind of weird seeing it in the N1 fly through there as if it was a pod racer, and just like 2 weird lines back to young Anakin. But it worked well. And I think not me, some eagle-eyed viewers saw, I guess, like the service ramp that gets like crashed through. There's some the wreckage is still there.
The wreckage from the barrier on the service ramp is still there that he used to like get the high ground and do a jump. So the other thing I saw that I thought was funny is in episode 4, when they're talking about attacking the Death Star, Luke's like, that's not that hard. Remember when we used to bullseye womp rats with our T-16s back in Beggar's Canyon? Well, what does Mando almost hit with his ship? A womp rat in Beggar's Canyon. And I'm like, references. So it still worked. It was funny. It was enough to be like nudge, nudge, wink, wink, and still not disrupt from the story, I think. But it was a lot of fun.
I feel like a bad Star Wars fan because I should have known that reference, but it totally went over my head at the time.
The point, the issue with referencing literally the first ever Star Wars movie is I'm pretty sure like 80% of any sort of like reference in that movie was literally just made up for world building and set building for the purpose of making the world feel authentic in that one movie, because they may not have even known they were going to get sequels. What's that?
Right.
The Clone Wars was essentially that.
Yeah. Because I saw something on TikTok the other day. Someone's like, when you were first watching Star Wars, and this is before the prequels came out and everything else, what did you think the Clone Wars was? And I'm like, I don't know. It just sounded cool when I was a kid. It sounded something that would be like spacey. Yes, Clone Wars. That tracks. So after the Beggar's Canyon run, and does anyone else have any thoughts on the Beggar's Canyon run? Any feelings, any commentary?
That it was so totally wizard.
Yeah. that whole scene was just fun. It made me want to watch The Phantom Menace, but I didn't have time.
I was going to say, and if something makes you want to watch The Phantom Menace, that means it's hitting the nostalgia button just right. Because that is a hard watch to get through for some of it. One of the hardest. So next we're going to take off from that scene to the next scene with the ship where it goes into space, and we see the little Rhodian kid again, and he flies by apparently the same people leaving, Mos Eisley, leaving Tatooine on another commuter ship. Like, why do you only pop over to Tatooine for like a day or two? We have someone, Tiger Blue Eyes, in the chat saying hi. Hi, how's it going, Tiger Blue Eyes? Thank you for joining us. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions or commentary, drop them in the chat. We'll be happy to talk about it. We have our fearless leader, Captain Kyle, talked about they loved the Eat My Dust scene with the New Republic fighters and the traffic stop interaction in general. I have a thought on that. Are there literally only 2 New Republic pilots in the entire Outer Rim? Because it's like the same guy keeps showing up.
I mean, I think that's kind of the point, though. The Outer Rim has always been
the Outer Rim.
Yeah, it's not fully like looked at or patrolled or anything by like the Republic or the Empire. That's why the Hutts were able to kind of have such a hold there. So like kind of the Tatooine and the Outer Rim itself as a whole is the Wild Wild West. So
which probably makes sense for the fact that like even though Tatooine is kind of like a pointless dirt ball in the edge of the galaxy, why it's still such a popular place for people to go to, people probably go there because they just don't want to be hassled by the New Republic or the Empire or whatever. Like not even criminals, just people like, I don't want to do things like pay taxes. I don't even need roads. I'm just going to go live on a farm in the desert. So
yeah, and I mean, Tatooine is kind of presented as being kind of poor, but for those off-world visitors, Jabba, at least when he was in charge, had the credits flowing through.
Yeah,
there was work to be had.
Michael, what were you gonna say?
So that same pilot his name is Carson Treva, and he's shown up in a couple of these like traffic stops throughout the Star Wars live action TV shows, and he's said that he's worried that something else is going on out here. This is a clear indicator that maybe he's the only one who's got eyes and ears out there, and he's aware that the First Order or the beginnings of the First Order are really like starting to come to fruition. And maybe if he did file some paperwork, we wouldn't be rolling into this issue in 30 years.
It's true.
That was kind of my thoughts when I saw this episode. It finally kind of clicked to me because, in Mando season 2, we see the cloning facilities on Navarro. He appears a couple times in that season to talk, about these Imperial remnants that Din Djarin and his group have obviously, ran across. Finds Din Djarin again, asks him about it. It's kind of like, in a way, maybe if Mando would just tell this guy what's going on, the sequels wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, but we don't trust the police, so
Okay, Cab.
No, but
Yeah.
but on that, can we? I know that we praised Bryce Dallas Howard earlier, but can we like give credit to Jon Favreau too? Because I mean, it's basically just like the MCU, where it's tying all these worlds together.
Yep.
And eventually, it's just going to be one. I mean, it is one big colossal universe.
Yes, I am gonna say, like, I don't personally hate the sequel movies. I know there's a lot of people that are very torn on the sequel movies. Even the worst of the sequel movies, I very much enjoy. Like, Rise of Skywalker was a mess, but I had a lot of fun with it. Shrug.
Same.
But I will say, if they just decide to like not go 30 years in the future now and just kind of stick with this like 5 years after Jedi and build an entire universe with this that only hints at what could be happening in the future, I'm fine with that. They're doing a really good job of world building. Like the movies have always been so obsessed with the battle between the Jedi and the Sith and the Empire and the Republic that we don't get a chance to see the world for what it is.
Mhm.
And I think that's what these shows can really do. Even the animated shows that are all about the battles between the Jedi and the Sith and the Empire and the Republic still give us an opportunity to breathe and see what's happening in the world. Like, take a step back and see what's happening, because it's not like we're cramming the entire conflict into a 2-hour period. So we have a chance to do more with it.
Yeah.
And I think this episode is a clear example of all that. So yeah. Any other thoughts on this scene before we move on to the last chunk of this episode?
I do want to point out the one pilot was the stand-in for Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
And he's a great actor. I'm kind of hoping they like either keep this character around, or maybe his involvement is like a hint towards the fact that they're keeping him around for maybe some more Luke Skywalker.
That would make sense.
I was gonna say I kind of liked his whole, like, just his scenes in general. He was trying to, do everything by the book. He didn't seem like a rookie, but he didn't seem like, a wizened veteran
Right.
in this situation. So
he's like 2 years on the Force.
Yeah, like, and he was playing his role really well, and he was kind of dumbfounded when the older guy is like, "Nah, we can let him off with a warning." He's like,
See, I get the impression that the older one, the pilot that we've seen, again, I don't know the dude's name because names in Star Wars are so weird. They're just a random collection of consonants and vowels. But with the exception of Tobias, what's his nuts? And
Beckett.
I'm like, oh, yeah, Tobias Beckett, the most normal name in Star Wars, which makes it feel the least normal,
Right.
regardless. But like, I feel like that dude, the older pilot, the one who's been showing up in the Mandalorian frequently and stuff, is very much a veteran of the war between the Empire and the Republic. Because if we're only five years after the Empire and the Rebellion, then very much he is. Chances are good he was a fighter pilot or something.
I'm curious. This is just kind of me thinking, here, but like, I'm curious to know if like maybe he had any experiences with Luke during the war, and maybe like he's kind of wizened to what could be happening. Doesn't know, but kind of is like, hey.
And if you're the kind of person that survived that entire conflict and then goes into working with the New Republic afterwards, you've seen some things like, like look at Cassian Andor with the whole, like, he was a little more jaded to the rebellion, but was like, but this is the only thing we can do right now. So the hard choices have to be made. And I kind of feel like he might be kind of in the same boat. And yeah, he may have been someone that flew with Luke, and that would have been awesome. But anyone else, anything else before we move to the next scene? Awesome. So he lands, as you mentioned, wizard. The ship is awesome, loves it. And she mentions that a friend showed up, and Mando, like, as the season's gone on, there are more people that you could say that about him, like he's got friends, but it's not like there's a huge amount of those. And then we figure out pretty quickly that it's Fennec. And as soon as she said a friend showed up, we all knew it was Fennec. Like we knew what was happening. And she's like, "Don't worry, I locked her out." And then I put the entire thing on security lockdown. And I immediately went to Talos from Captain Marvel, just be like, "No." And then there she was sitting, because you can't keep her out of a place like that. Fennec shows up, says, "I got a job for you. Boba Fett could use the help." And Den is just like, "Cool, I'll do it for free, gratis this time around," because he probably feels like he owes Boba for helping him out. And also, I think after being kicked out of the Mandalorians, Den is just looking for family of any sort, and that's the best step. So what do we think of this? What do we think of this whole scene, the last scene of this episode?
I love it. Just don't call it the Book of Boba Fett.
Captain Kyle chimes in saying, I think Mando's a horrible businessman. He could have at least given a discount. Yeah, but I think as someone who deals with freelancing work in some occasions, he probably doesn't have a price sheet for muscle work, just a price sheet for bodyguarding. So he's like, I'll do this one for free and then figure it out and use it for advertising. I'll put him in my CV.
I kind of predict that Boba's going to be part of Mando's thing to retake Mandalore. So they're just going to be exchanging favors back and forth.
Totally.
The dejected, son goes to the brother instead of the parents at this point, right? So yeah, I mean, they have a lot in common. It's the honorable thing to do, right? And so Din is like, yo, Fett's family, like, let's do this. And I think I'm more concerned and confused about what he says to close out the episode, about how it would kind of like fit into the timeline, or like if that's maybe like our first glimpse into what Mandalorian season 3 is going to handle. But it does feel like weird from like a timing standpoint. Anyone else feel the same way?
Yes, but I have thoughts on that. But Jaz.
I mean, so this was obviously my favorite scene. I just love it when Fennec starts. It just gives it more just excitement for me for whatever reason, just because she's a badass. But yeah, I mean, that makes sense that it's like two brothers.
Yeah,
but I still want to see them battle it out. I can't help it.
It's really interesting calling them. It's really interesting calling them brothers too, because they're both kind of like outsiders to the Mandalorian culture, but are also intrinsically tied to the Mandalorian culture, whether they like it or not. Which is a fascinating perspective, I think, in that regard.
I mean, is Star Wars not about found family?
That's all Star Wars is. So I would like to spend the last 10-ish minutes of our panel, because we're actually doing pretty good on time, talking about what we think is going to be happening going forward. I'd like to start real quick. I just want to get my things out there and give you guys a chance to figure it out, think about what you want. So I think that we are going to see the next episode won't have Din, but he's going to show up for the final 2 episodes kind of thing, because he's going to go off and do his Seize Grogu thing. I think what we're going to end with, because I really am feeling, whether it was popular or not, the intent was always to make Book of Boba Fett a one-shot series and then go back to the Mandalorian, and then Boba Fett can show up and do things or be referenced, or they can go to Tatooine and see Boba Fett anytime they want. But this is to establish Boba Fett as the choke holder of Tatooine, so to speak, or the benevolent dictator of Tatooine, whatever you want to call him. But I think we're going to have Mando's problem of not having a solid ship solved, because if Boba's just going to chill on Tatooine, he doesn't really need the fire spray anymore. So like, we could see a full circle thing and Mando get that ship afterwards, which I think would be a really cool move, kind of cementing what Din is in this world, and allows him to be a bounty hunter and have a mobile home again. I also think there is a potential. You guys brought up that the other actor in the fighter ships was the guy who was the stand-in for Luke and stuff like that occasionally and things. And I think there's a very good chance that he's going to go see Grogu, and I don't know how, and it wouldn't make a lot of sense, but it would be something that would make sense from a perspective of wanting to get all these cool characters in one scene, that he's going to bring Luke back to help with the problems on Tatooine, because Tatooine was also Luke's home originally. So, which was going to cause some very interesting friction between Luke and Boba, because, Luke and Boba. What do y'all think?
I have a lot of thoughts. So I don't think Boba would relinquish his slave one, the fire spray, regardless of anything Din would do, just because that was his dad's ship. That was Django's ship. I like the idea. I think that'd be cool if it does happen, and I would not be mad if
it's definitely a stretch of a thought, but I think the potential is there for that to happen.
I do like the idea of, I've thought of the idea of kind of like Din bringing Luke into the fold, considering that Luke and Boba have a connection. Luke's probably thinking Boba Fett's dead, but not realizing Boba Fett played a hand in getting Grogu to Luke. That could be interesting. I don't think that's going to happen. I actually, if I was going to put my money on any Jedi showing up, it'd probably be Ahsoka, considering her
Link to Mandalore.
yeah, with Bo-Katan even and everything else. I forgot your first point though, Joe. What was that again?
I don't even remember.
Yeah.
Oh, that he's not going to be in the next episode. Like he's going to have that one episode going off doing his thing, and then he'll be back for the last two.
Actually, it wasn't even that. I think it was you mentioned how you don't think the Book of Boba Fett is going to continue for more seasons.
Yeah.
I don't know how if that's true or not, because I feel like the stakes they don't feel high at the moment. We've seen little of anything that the Pikes are doing other than them potentially wiping out the Tusken tribe. They're moving spice, but they've been moving spice for years.
Yeah, probably before Boba Fett was born.
Yeah, so it's. I feel like this season is probably going to build to the second season, if anything. It could, maybe you are right. Maybe it is a one shot, and the second season is kind of combined with Mando season 3. But I feel like there's only 2 episodes left, and we don't have enough time to kind of get everything in those episodes.
I think there's 3.
No, it's 7 episodes.
There's only 7? Okay, I could have sworn I saw 8 somewhere.
I thought I saw 8 somewhere too, so.
But it also could be that it's getting a second season and they're already counting the episode count for the first episode of the next season.
There you
go. IMDb likes to do that. Michael, Jazz, what do y'all think?
Jazz, take it away.
All right. So, I mean, I kind of agree with Damien on the fact that I think we probably will get a season 2. I've kind of said it. I never really confirmed that theory to myself, probably until hearing Damien say his reasons. But I remember a few weeks ago, I was like, this show is just going too slow for it to be a one shot. There's just so many more things to be told about it, in my personal opinion. But I mean, again, what I want to see happen is, that shampoo commercial. That's what I want.
Herbal essence, Tatooine.
I mean, I know we got some big MCU fans on the panel, and I think I remember feeling extremely underwhelmed when Loki ended, and a lot of people were like, "How could you say that?" We look back at some things that happened in the MCU years later. My landlord and my girlfriend's dad made this point to me. He was like, "We talk about how awesome it is that the groundwork was laid for so many things all these years later. Maybe this season is just a setup season for the greater things to happen in the Disney Plus Star Wars universe." It's why we can take it
great too to go back and reappreciate these stories for what it is 10 years down the road.
It's the idea that Endgame made a bunch of other Marvel movies better. And I'm just saying.
Sorry, I had something in my throat there.
But see, and it's not that I don't think that this isn't important stuff happening to groundwork lay, but I don't necessarily think it's a second season of the Book of Boba Fett. That's where I'm at. Everything that's happening is important to set up other stuff later on. And it's just done relatively poorly through the Book of Boba Fett, which I'm still enjoying, but it is the weakest of the live action Star Wars stuff so far. But yeah, I don't know. I'm also thinking that after this episode, my theory that Finnick is going to betray Boba is much less prevalent. I don't think that's happening anymore. I think if anything, previously the look she was giving him and the vibe she was giving off was literally just this fucking guy. But not so much. I
remember agreeing with you about that too a few weeks ago, and I agree with you again.
Even I was starting to feel it because you guys were doing a good job of convincing me.
Well,
we were wrong. We were wrong. I would be so happy and pleasantly surprised if it goes the other way, but I don't think it's going to happen either.
I personally am very happy that I no longer feel that's going to happen. I'm very happy because I like as weird as it is, I like Finnick and Boba's friend relationship thingy, whatever they have going. I really like that because it feels like she's the only person Boba feels actually comfortable to just kind of chill around, and that's really nice to have. You always need a friend that you can be like that. And yeah, he doesn't listen to her advice, but he always asks for her advice, which is very important ish. But yeah, any other thoughts about the future of this show before we wrap things up?
I just find kind of even trying to predict anything on this show very hard to do.
That's fair, and I just find predicting to be fun. I don't want to put too much investment in it, but it's fun to just kind of theorize.
I agree. I still think Crimson Dawn may show up. I mean, it's hard to say at this point. Like, we're 2 episodes away from the finale at this point, and I mean, I like I said, I don't even understand much other than they're moving spice. Why do the pikes matter?
Yeah.
One thing I do want to note though is episode 6 is written and directed by Dave Filoni.
Yes. So, and I think 6 is supposed to be the episode that they were like, there's a big thing happening in this episode. So
can't wait. Let's go.
It's going to be exciting. I do have a layer of criticism to just kind of like, and I know that we've kind of hit on it like sparingly as the episode's go on, but I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. And it's just, if this episode doesn't end up having a larger impact on Boba's story, my God, the misplacement.
Absolutely.
I like when Boba pretty much steals the show in the tragedy in The Mandalorian, and that's fine, but it also pushes that story forward in such a huge way. This needs to do the same, and I don't know how you do it without having Boba Fett involved in this episode at all. But I want to see some of these things pay off. Like Mando's journey needs to impact the rest of this season in some way, even if it doesn't happen until the finale.
Yeah, I agree. And that is the big thing. Like, as much as I enjoyed this episode, I find it frustrating that this episode was basically just a Mandalorian episode that is leading us to a Boba Fett episode, because it's one thing if like 20 minutes into the episode, Fennec showed up and then he had to go talk to Boba and figure out what was going on. That would make more sense. But literally it was the last like 3 minutes. Fennec's like, hey, got a job for you. And he's like, cool. I don't have any questions. So
and there are like examples in previous, like in the Clone Wars, there's like arcs that happen from season 1 through 4 that really impact arcs in season 5, where it's like, they have nothing to do with each other until they have everything to do with each other. I just don't want to see something like that. I guess I don't want to see something like that rush, but I also don't want to see it wasted.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So we're going to go ahead and wrap up. I hope everyone enjoyed both this panel and this episode, because this is a really good episode. Criticisms of it not being a Boba Fett episode at all aside. But it was a lot of fun. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to my distinguished panel of friends to let them kind of just talk about themselves for a minute, and we'll go from there. Jaz, why don't we start with you? Why don't you tell the fine people out there where they can find you and what you're up to?
All right, so I'm Jaz. You can find me at Rose City Widow on Instagram. I'm also doing choir stuff again, finally, thank goodness. Vancouver Master Chorale, you can find them on Instagram and Facebook. Honeybee Sing, Facebook, Instagram. And you know what? Next week, come join us with your boba tea.
I'm going to go get a boba tea for next week. We talked about it multiple times, like 4 episodes ago, and I keep forgetting to do it. Michael, why don't you tell the fine people where they can find you and what you're up to?
You can find me right here next week, actually talking about Boba Fett, because if he doesn't show up for 2 episodes in a row, I don't know what we're doing.
Allegedly.
And you can also find me on Instagram at Mikey_the_illest for some Star Wars and sports art. I'll pass over to Damien.
Yeah, I don't have anything going on. I just kind of sit around and be a dad and work full time. But
and watch Star Wars.
Yes, and watch Star Wars. But you can find me pretty much anywhere under the username DJ Dennis OU. Yeah.
And I've been your host, Joe Davis. You can find me on Twitter and TikTok and various places where I'm at The Spice Must Joe. You can find me on LinkedIn, where I'm just my name. You can also find me on Fandom Spotlite, where when I'm not disassociating or spiraling into madness, I am occasionally writing some things. And you can find me on Wednesdays on the Rollmongers podcast on Twitch and YouTube and other various locations, where I have been playing Pathfinder 2nd Edition. We have some other stuff in the works I'm very excited for. I'm going to be playing with them more often, which is super exciting. Tabletop RPGs is my life before everything else. So Thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week with some more bounty hunter and crime lord shenanigans in a galaxy far, far away. And remember, in the meantime, to enjoy the things you love and follow your fandom.